One thing Corona definitely told us, that a lot of things can go wrong very, very quickly. And another thing is that the importance of science in this whole process of, are we allowed to go out, are we not allowed to go out, what kind of protection we have to, how much social distancing we need. This is very often based on on science. So for the first time, really, scientists kind of were involved in our political decisions. And that's the topic of, that I would like to talk with you in the next 10 to 15 minutes here in the CitizenLab of the Ars Electronica Center. Welcome to another edition of Home Delivery. My name is Andreas, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit with you about citizen science. I brought you a couple of examples how you at home can actually participate in becoming a scientist and learn something about your environment. Citizen science is not particularly something new. It goes back quite a long time, and in science it was always quite popular that you find, or it's kind of common understanding, that you find out something, you publish it, you give it to everybody to read it in order to can build on their own next steps. I mean, remember, I'm not sure if this quote is correct, but I think it was Newton saying, if I made progress, it was because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. So each new data kind of elevates the next step forward. But what has changed over the last couple of years is that we as citizens, we as the people, can actively participate in collecting data and becoming part of this global research. So in science, it was quite obvious to do this right from the beginning. Particularly in the US, in the beginning of the 70s, with the NASA, with the National Aeronautics Space Administration, they started to actively publish their material and give it out to the public in order to make their own findings and their own suggestions. It's also what the European Space Agency does. It's what CERN does in Geneva, where there's Large Hadron Colliders. This is data that is available for each and everybody. But it's actually quite logical if you think of it, because these institutions are run with taxpayers' money. So in the end, it's us paying it anyway. So why shouldn't we have access to this data on the first place? More and more of this data collection became popular, and finally, with the internet, the kind of perfect way of distributing this data, but also on the other hand, of citizens to also feed in their data became available. And with electronics becoming cheaper and cheaper by the day, with 3D printing, do it at home, do it yourself, all these kind of things that evolved, it also became quite logical to use that also for collecting scientific relevant data. And this little device that I have here in my hand is one example. It's measuring air quality. It was kind of invented, is maybe not the correct word, but kind of put together by a lab in Stuttgart in Germany. And I don't know if you know the city of Stuttgart, but it's kind of autocentristic city. There's lots of cars, there's lots of traffic, and with traffic we talk about pollution, we talk about exhaust fumes, we talk about noise. And these little devices here are measuring the air quality. Now, what you can do is you just can go on the website, and I've put it up here, this website for you. It's called luftdaten.info. airdata.info. You'll find it easily on the web, and we'll put it also in the commentaries. You can build this little thing at home with a couple of euros. It's not a lot of things. And if you also said, well, I wanted to learn something about electronics, I always wanted to do a little bit welding by myself, here's quite an easy and cheap way to start, and at the same time really participate in a larger project. So these little devices, you just hang it outside your garage, your window, wherever you want. The cover is printed with our 3D printer, or you can basically do whatever you want. You can add whatever device you would like to do that. Put it outside, and it starts measuring the air quality. And by far, you are not alone. I've put it on you the website of Linz here. Oh, it's actually the Luftdaten.info, so if you go on finding the sensors, we have Linz here, and each of these little tile means there's somebody having a device like that sending data onto this global network. And you see, even so here in the city of Linz, which is not the main focus of this part, there are already quite some areas covered. And if you want to press on it, you can actually access the sensor data here. In that case, for example, it gives you the particles. There's quite a bigger particles to 10 micromillimeters square. Insane. And of course, this is stored in a database. So if you're a scientist and want to observe how the air quality in the corona time, in this lockdown time, changed, this is obviously a very relevant source where you can access this data. It's open, it's free, so everybody can access it. And that's a wonderful thing about data. If you share it, it becomes more. It can be much more relevant and can be used in very different things. So we are not depending on commercially available data. I was mentioning the European Space Agency before. It's the same thing here. They have satellites, Earth observation satellites, monitoring the Earth and also monitoring the air quality, for example. And also this data is available free of charge in open source environments. So you can actually then combine maybe what your little device outside in the garden is connecting to a much more global scale on what the data from the satellites give you. And if we zoom out a little bit, we actually see that this is quite common. You're by far not alone. Yeah? Maybe I'll take the button here. It's maybe a bit more comfortable. You see, if you go in, probably like German, particularly around bigger cities, we have Munich here, we have Graz, we have Vienna and Linz. There's quite some coverage. So they can be really kind of a counterpart to the commercially available sources of this kind of data. Oops, I wanted to close it in order to give you a bigger picture here. They come with all kind of different sensors. So if you're interested in temperature, maybe also noise. I mean, we were starting with the corona lockdown. Have you experienced that actually the environment was much more quiet the last couple of weeks? You could finally hear the birds singing in the town again and all those kind of things. Well, it's maybe also another part of pollution that we're usually exposed to, and that can be also measured with this little device. Air quality is one thing. If you say, well, I would like to touch on some very different topic, there are literally hundreds of citizen science projects out there, and feel free to stroll around and go on the web and find one that suits your purpose. And if you ask me personally, I'm a little bit interested in butterflies when they are in my garden and run around, but I always tend to forget the name of these butterflies. So I downloaded one of these little apps on my smartphone, and whenever I see a butterfly in my garden, I can take a picture and then I can look up in the database and find the name. So I remembered, finally, that's Schwalbenschwanz, and this is this kind of bird. Butterfly, but at the same time, this data is participating and is helping scientists to better understand the distribution, the impact on our natural system. That's butterflies do in a certain environment. And quite too interesting to also see then at the end of the year, usually you get like a report and where also the scientists give their view on this data back, and you learned that they found some new species that were not popular or not known in Austria before. This is one part of citizen science. Another little bit of topic I would like to touch on for the next couple of minutes is that one thing we experienced in coronavirus that a lot, and in the corona crisis, a lot of things moved and shifted into the digital environment. And not only, as I mentioned, the citizen science in order to post your data there, but we started to participate in video conferences. Streaming went skyrocket. I think each and every one of us probably has like 3 accounts now in the different providers. We used internet much more. In the beginning of the internet, kind of one of the utopias, or if you would like to say that, put it that way, is that it kind of becomes disconnected from the real, from the natural, from the world that you can actually touch to. But if we look at the energy consumption that is necessary to run and to provide all this data, all these services, streaming, Wikipedia, or the streaming as we're doing right now here, actually consumes a lot of energy. And often we're not aware of this. we do sometimes see images of gigantic warehouses that Google, Amazon, and all they are running. Yeah? We have maybe already heard that they are positioning these kind of warehouses, data warehouses, where there is cooling power available because the servers constantly need water to be cooled, or the air conditions needs the water that constantly is necessary. So energy consumption is quite a big thing. And if you sum up all these kind of things, it's quite astonishing that actually if the internet would be a country like Austria, like Germany, like the States, in terms of energy consumption, the internet actually would be the third largest energy consuming country in the world. For something that feels a little bit like virtual, digital, it's quite astonishing that it's actually such a big, has such a big impact. What we also experienced in the Corona crisis is how depending we are on these services, and a couple of these services like YouTube and others actually started to throttle down their bandwidth during this crisis because of this restriction and these limitations as well. So if you come to, and that's like what I would like to touch on as another topic, is we're so much into the high technology that we try sometimes to forget that there is actually also a low technology solution to a lot of these issues. It's not always that we need newer, higher equipment, consuming more bandwidth, consuming more energy, consuming more materials in the whole distribution chain or in the logistics chain, from produce it somewhere in Southeast Asia until we consume these very expensive pieces here in the Western world. And this is a nice example. It's called the Low-Tech magazine. It's actually a web server that is run solely with or on solar power. It's based in Barcelona in Spain, and the author and the editor of Tech Magazine actually has a little solar panel out on his balcony, and whenever this solar panel is producing power, the website is on. And obviously it has to be very much reduced. It's not that we can have fancy graphics and streaming and all those kind of fancy eye candies available all the time. It's actually very, very reduced. I mean, see of the image quality that is provided here, but this is actually done on purpose in order to make us think about how much energy we're actually consuming while using services on the internet. And of course, if the sun is not shining, this website is offline. Yeah? And I think this is something also quite to think of, because usually we take everything for granted. Yeah? We switch on in the morning, the first thing, you check your emails, you check your social media, all those kind of things, and you take it for granted that they're there. You're already annoyed when it maybe takes 2 seconds longer than usually. Yeah? We start to click around if this is something. Think a couple of years back, this would be a natural habit. Today, the first thing when we get off the train or the plane, hopefully soon again, the first thing is we check for a free Wi-Fi. 5 years, 10 years ago, it was not a big thing. Nobody needed things like Wi-Fi. But today, they're here. And of course, they offer fantastic possibilities, like sending live from the Ars Electronica Center home to you, wherever in the world you are. And I hope you like this little edition, me talking about citizen science project, the air quality that you can measure at home, or the Low-Tech magazine from Barcelona. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you soon in one of the home deliveries from Ars Electronica Center. Bye-bye.